Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. We're going to pick up right where we left off. Roll call, please.
This is Yessie.
Here.
This is McCarthy.
Here.
This is Saxon.
Here.
This is Tamara.
Here.
Mr. Vaca.
Here. Finalization of the agenda. Is there anything to add and or delete?
The agenda is final as presented.
Thank you very much. We'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Excellent. So, as you know, report cards were released a few weeks ago. David Pritt is here with us tonight, who is going to share our results. We do know that there were limited results on the spring and spring testing and lack thereof, but there were some things that were reported that he would like to share with you. So, Mr. Pritt.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you this evening. As Mrs. Casario said, we have recently received a report card from the state of Ohio, and with everything that happened at the end of last school year, it is pretty limited in what we have to share with you. But I do want to hit on a couple of highlights because I think there are some important pieces to come out of this, some pieces of data that we should be pretty excited about as a group because I think it continues to show the growth in the direction that we're working here in the district. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. All right. So just a couple of quick slides here to work through. As we said, it's very different than what we are used to seeing for a report card. A typical report card is going to have probably 15 or so different scores. Again, this year we're looking at pretty limited information. So due to the lack of state testing, which is where a lot of the report card comes from, we're limited. And what they did for these areas to where we're not showing data is they actually mark them as NR or not reported. So if you were to open the state report card and see that, that's really what that means. Really the three areas to focus on or that we want to focus on are improving at-risk reading for our K-3 students, prepared for success, and the graduation rate will be those three that I kind of hit on today for you. So improving K-3 reading, we've got some really good results here. So when you look at the kindergarten, the first grade, the second grade results, those are from the beginning of the year results. So at the beginning of kindergarten, about 62.5% of our students come to us as being considered on track for reading. That number grows to about just under 66% in first grade. At second grade, that number bumps up to 73.2%. In a typical year, that's where we'll start when we look at our end of the year data. Generally, we're somewhere in that 80 to 85% of our students being on track. And then when you look at our third grade diagnostic, that one's a little different. That's actually an end of the year report. So they measure beginning of the year to end of the year report. And what you'll see on that right-hand side is, 99.7% of our students met the requirements for promotion to fourth grade. So basically, as the state lines it out, are your students ready to be promoted to fourth grade? And you can see that, again, we've got that number up to that 100% mark where typically we find our students. Again, when we look at the number of students who have had to be retained due to the third grade reading guarantee over the last, 8 years now, we're still talking single digits and low single digits at that. So our students come in, in that 60 to 70% range. We grow them, by the time they leave that third grade piece to, having all of our students, according to the state and their measurements, as being on track for graduation. So that was one of the pieces of data you'd find in the report card. The next piece is prepared for success. And I struggle a little bit with prepared for success overall as a category. And the reason for that is the state has a very narrow definition of what is prepared for success. So they're looking at students that are going off to 2- and 4-year schools. They're looking for industry recognized credentials. They're looking at students that have earned college credits or before they've graduated. It doesn't necessarily take into account a student who might go to the military who would be prepared for success, or a student who joins the workforce prepared for success. So I have an issue with any of the report card categories, and you could ask me any year, it would be this one. We've got some good numbers here. So what I have on the left side are our numbers from this current school year or from the 1920 school year. On the right-hand side are the 1819, and a couple of things to point out there. The first is our SAT participation has gone from 51% to 91%, growth of about 40% there. During that time, we've picked up about 17% of more students who are SAT remediation free, which I think is a great number. We've basically kept stable with the number of students earning our honors diploma. But when we look at our percentage of students taking our AP courses, that has grown. We've added percentages of students who have taken our AP exams and gotten through or better. That has grown. And then our dual enrollment has stayed about the same. What's exciting out of this number for me, if I'm looking at one, is if I look at the 2019 percent, about 42%, 43% of our students got the bonus points for Prepared for Success. This year, we're at 50.4%. So in a single year that we have grown this particular score by about 7%, and I expect that number to continue over the next couple of years. Because the thing with Prepared for Success is it generally trails at least 2 years behind where you are with data. So as we have added these programs at the high school for AP, as we've done some additional SAT work and those type of things, we're going to see that number continue to increase. But when you look at a 7-point jump, that's pretty substantial and pretty significant. And then a third area I've put on here is graduation rate, which ultimately is the one that we're all here for. You know, our goal is to get students into the system and get them ready to graduate and graduate so they can move on to that next phase of life, whether, again, that's the military, whether it's the workforce, whether it's college or whatever it happens to be. And these numbers have stayed pretty consistent, and knowing what we went through last year, we're in good shape with that. So last year, our 4-year graduation rate was a 92.1%. That was down about 1% over the prior year. With everything that happened in the spring, with not having students in buildings for 3 or 4 months, it's not surprising to see that down by the percentage. And then if we look at our 5-year graduation rate at 92.1, that's off within less than 1/2 of a point of where we were in our prior year. So I expect both of those numbers to jump back up. I expect them to increase again this year, back to where they have traditionally been. If you look at our charts and everything, you can see that for the last couple of years since 2016, they had been on an upward trend. So that's where I expect those to go and where I expect them to get them back to, particularly if we find ourselves in a spot to where we can get back, you know, full time, hopefully sometime here in the near future. This coming school year, what we're looking at is, as of right now, things are still scheduled for the spring to be testing. So provided we're able to get through the school year, provided that state testing happens in the spring, as of right now, we'll probably have a more robust report card this time next year. So I would expect to see some changes there. And again, I think the things that we have in place will just continue to increase these scores as we've been doing for the last several years. So not the same amount of data, but I think we've got some good critical data here that we can look at, that we can build on. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Britt. That concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, we'll move on to hearing of the public. Here's an opportunity for the public to address any items that are on our agenda this evening.
Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and give the people the ability to unmute their microphones and be able to ask a question to the board. Microphones are unmute. Okay, with that then, I believe we do not have any questions to the board.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have nothing in the education or policy this evening. Ms. Yetsey, you have something for us out of communications?
Yes, it's recommended that the Board of Education accept the following gifts with appreciation. We received $112.81 donated by Ashley Meese through the Charities Aid Foundation of America with the Employee Matching Program in North Ridgeville High School. A new 55-inch Samsung TV was donated by Mr. Patrick East to the Rachel's Closet program for a value of $400, and 18 full leather molten volleyballs were donated by North Ridgeville Volleyball Boosters to the North Ridgeville Volleyball team for a value of $720. This brings our total donations received for the 2020-2021 school year for $1,781.76. In addition, we have a consideration of a sponsorship agreement with University Hospital Elyria Medical Center. We are excited for this partnership and ongoing commitment that UH invests in the North Ridgeville community. We thank the community for their tremendous support for our schools.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the buildings and operation report. We have one item to consider this evening under the buildings and operations report. We have a bus camera to consider for reassignment of equipment that will be used for spare parts sold or disposed of. This concludes the buildings and operations report. Move on to human resources. Ms. Saxon.
Yes, we have a number of items in the human resources report: 18 special project supplemental contracts, 24 supplemental contract appointments, 21 non-NREA supplemental contract appointments, 4 unpaid volunteer recognitions, 9 hourly tutor appointments, 4 certified staff adjustments, 2 support staff leaves of absence, 1 certified staff resignation. This concludes the Human Resources report.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
I noticed on here that we have quite a few non-NREA supplemental contract appointments. Can you shed some light on why we have so many non-teachers in our supplemental?
Certainly. Mr. Ahern, would you like to address that question?
Sure. So it is probably a little deceiving at this point. We have almost 200 total supplementals. 72 of them are currently unfilled at this point because we're trying to be cautious about approving supplementals if we don't think it's safe to do so with some of the circumstances that we're under with COVID, making sure that with the hybrid model that teachers can participate in doing these activities. So it probably looks a little off that what we've only approved at this point are coaches. And with the 191 total supplementals that we have, the bottom line is that we have almost more supplementals than we have staff members that could fill them all. But we run roughly around 50% of our staff accepting the supplementals. They're posted internally first before we offer them to anybody outside of the district. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to policy report. Ms. McCarthy?
Thank you. Under other business this evening, we have the second reading of the new and revised attendance policy hosted by Neola. As you recall, the first reading was on our September 15th regular meeting. I move to approve and adopt the revised policy attendance 5200.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McCarthy, second by Ms. Saxon. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. We'll move back to human resources. Ms. Saxon?
Yes, we have a few items to consider under the Human Resources report. 2 supplemental contracts, 1 hourly tutor appointment, 1 support staff appointment, 4 support staff adjustments, 3 support staff resignations, 1 support staff substitute resignation. I move to approve the Human Resources items in 1 reading.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Saxon, second by Ms. McCarthy. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. Okay, here's an opportunity for hearing of the public on new items. If there's something you'd like to address the board about this evening, now's your opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Vaca. The participants have the ability to unmute their microphones. If you'd like to address the board, please unmute. Okay, Mr. Vaca, I'm going to re-enable the muting of our end.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education adjourn this special meeting.
Moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Tamira, second by Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes.